3, 2, 1. Welcome to the Lightforge podcast. This is ADWCTA.
This is Merps. Hope you guys had a good BlizzCon, enjoyed everything. I thought Blizzard put on a pretty good show. This is the first time that Blizzard has done it all online, and it was pretty tight. I mean, I guess it's a lot easier when you can pre-record everything to just play it, but it was done very well. I enjoyed all of the specific sort of like breakout sections as well. I watched a little bit of the Hearthstone, watched a little bit of Diablo, but I'm happy with what we saw, and congrats to Blizzard. This was pretty good.
Okay, I had a totally different experience where I was watching the main stage, right, for the first intro, and it was good, and it was corny, as you expect it to be, and it was like, he's getting in the mood, and then they're like, oh, this is done. I'm like, okay, fine. I'm going to go over and watch some Diablo or Hearthstone stuff, and I couldn't, because there was no way to find the official stream. I could watch other people watching it on Twitch, but I couldn't watch the official stream because searching for BlizzCon does not bring the official stream up. So I was able to just watch the main.
I just go to the game channel on Twitch, and then I just find it.
Yeah,
there.
I was on my TV. My TV doesn't have a game channel. Like my Twitch app on my TV doesn't have a game channel. So I was using the search function, which did not work. It did not find BlizzCon. It did not find whatever. I searched Hearthstone. It was not one of the top things they're showing me under Hearthstone or Diablo. It was just other like popular Hearthstone and Diablo streamers talking about it and restreaming. So I just gave up after 10 minutes. So I don't know. I don't think it was a complete success just because, it didn't work for me.
Because you couldn't get it to work on your TV.
Yes. Yeah, but like I'm just being a regular user, right? Like you have a Twitch app, it should work. It didn't work. I used the search function, which is a pretty basic thing for finding stuff, hence the search function, and it didn't work, and I gave up. So I looked online and read up on all the information revealed after the main sequence. But a lot of stuff has happened in Hearthstone. A lot of stuff is coming up, and I think the biggest reveal, besides the stuff that we were 100% expecting and knew were going to happen, is this. What is it called? Mercenaries?
Yes. Mercenaries is the new game mode, which we knew was coming out, and I think we were all a little bit surprised because Duels KEKW is still a thing. But Blizzard promised a new game mode, and now we know that the new game mode is Hearthstone Mercenaries. Blizzard won't say, or Blizzard won't use this comparison because obviously it's another game, but it's essentially Blizzard's response to Slay the Spire. So it is a mostly single player with some multiplayer aspects to it, but you are taking.
But we don't know what multiplayer aspects there are to it because they won't tell us yet.
Yeah. Like that's the thing that they haven't completely revealed yet. But you're taking a group of characters through a trial, basically, and you can level up these characters, whether it's Ragnaros or Jaina, etc. They can gain levels, they can gain abilities, you can power them up, and then you face enemies there. So that's to the extent of what we know about it so far. There's, they gave us some more details, but if you've played Slay the Spire, it's kind of like Hearthstone's response to it. Not too surprising, like BG's was the response to auto chess. They saw the success of that, and they're like, hey, we can make a really good version of it. And they did. Battlegrounds is very popular right now. They think they can make a better version, or at least a comparable version to Slay the Spire. I don't know. We'll see when it comes out. I know we were very skeptical of BG's when it was announced, and I was just like, okay, you're just taking all of these mishmash cards that were not meant for this mode, and you're making this mode. I don't really see it having longevity and everything. I was happy to be proven wrong. So for Mercenaries, I don't know. I have no idea. They haven't given us that much details, but I do remember about a year and a half, a little bit more ago, when I was reading up on BGs and how they were kind of doing this and just taking cards they already had, I was like, yeah, okay, whatever. I don't see this becoming anything big. I was proven wrong. So hopefully I'm proven wrong again with Mercenaries, and it could be a ton of fun. I'm definitely going to check it out.
I don't know. I think Mercenaries sound pretty good just as a concept. Um, it may or may not be like I haven't played Slay the Spire because I read about the concept, I watched other people play it, and I was like, this seems fine, but it's just going to be a time sink, and I'm not going to hugely enjoy it compared to just playing arenas. So it didn't seem like a point for me personally, but I think the idea is a good one. I think the execution, if they put any significant amount of time to it, they can make new cards. They're probably going to make some new cards for Mercenaries. So it'll be it's designed to be this like roguelike kind of environment, right? Where you're able to roll it repeatedly a lot. It's single player, so it's not as intimidating as the rest of the Hearthstone content. And I'm sure they're looking at their successes with things like whatever the current single player campaign they now have is for all the heroes, the Book of Heroes, that I have not really touched after the Illidan one, and I was like, what is the point of this?
Yeah,
It's for people. It's apparently hugely popular. It's a great success. It's not for us. So Slay the Spire is going to be more for us because it's a roguelike. There's going to be like challenges involved. It's going to be pretty brutal, presumably, rather than just in terms of difficulty. But the whole idea is still that, and I get it. Like some people have anxiety playing against real people and having a 50% chance of losing. Going up against the computer in a step by step environment like it's a good option for Hearthstone to have, and I think it'll be pretty popular. Unlike duels, I don't think this one is set up to fail. In fact, I think Blizzard has to actively work to make this concept fail. Like this concept, if they put any amount of effort into it, is kind of like a sure thing. Whereas Battlegrounds was like a huge like swing, right? Like could have gone awful. Probably most times would have gone awful, and they just pulled it off. And Duels was like never going to work out, and just nobody figured that out before they launched it.
I think you can kind of at least tell with the thing about Battlegrounds is with Battlegrounds, there's a lot of fundamentals you can hang your hat on, such that if you miss a meta and you come back, at least like, okay, at its core, these things are exactly the same. The problem with duels is it's all about the treasures, and it's like the starting hero power and the treasures and the synergies between all of those. So you miss a period of time and you come back, you face a guy and you're just like, okay, I think I'm winning. And then they play a treasure that you have no idea. You're like, oh, okay, well, I lose. At the very least in BGs, at the start of the game, you might not know minions, but you can play like a good macro game and then learn slowly rather than not know, and then suddenly you get smacked by something that you just had no idea even existed.
Yeah, I think the results are kind of similar. I mean, nothing's as bad as duels, but the results, like, because I actually just came back, basically, right? Like on Friday after they did the patch, I played a few BGs on stream, and I hadn't really played BGs for like 3-4 months. Or 6 months, depending on what you consider play. I was a bit lost. It wasn't like a whole new game or anything, right? I waited out the spells before I came back. But it was still like there were so many times where I'm just like, I'm not scaling the way I should, the way I know I should be scaling.
Well,
I'm just gonna
will say I watched. I went back because our good friend Legendheart told me that your games were quite interesting. I went back and watched you. You made some interesting decisions there.
I made normal decisions for 8 months ago.
You made normal decisions for someone who didn't play in 4 to 6 months.
Yeah, exactly. Which is what I am. Someone who hasn't played for 4 to 6 months. We did a small sample size test, and when I listen to all of Twitch chat, I get 7th place. When I listen to Legendheart, I get 3rd place, and when I listen to just myself without looking at Twitch chat, I get 5th place, which is an area I am very comfortable in, especially if I'm presumably going to get better as I figure out what cards do. I have to like Google every elemental again, not to mention the new like taunt whatever cards, and I still have yet to play a taunt thing yet.
Like, that's your comp, man.
It feels like it. I haven't branched out to it yet. I've just been, trying to focus my thing on like Menagerie and on mechs. I was not given a good demon start the whole time, which was sad. I had to do beast once, which was also sad because it was beasts. But yeah, I think Mercenaries has a good shot in the future. And if you're a Hearthstone player, if you're not a Hearthstone player, whenever the hell they launch Mercenaries, which doesn't sound like it's coming anytime like next month or in the next 2 months, like it really sounds like something that they're going to put out like middle or end of summer. Just judging by the tone and the amount of information that they've released on it. But whenever they do come out with it, it's definitely something to give a shot. And I think for most people, like even like hardcore Hearthstone players, it'll be an enjoyable experience, and it'll probably keep you engaged for a significant amount of hours. Okay,
Yep.
so that's the new game mode, which is an exciting announcement, but without that many details. On the other hand, we do have the new expansion that is going to come out in a month and a half, probably. And it is the Barrens. Forged in the Barrens, which I understand is something to do with WoW, where they're forging you in the Barrens, and the Barrens is like this tough place, and you become tougher by battling through it, or something like that. I don't know. All I do know is that they have a new mechanic that they told us about, Frenzy, and they also have a new kind of like card series, which is these cards that upgrade. So you wanna jump into that?
Yeah, sure. So let's talk about Frenzy for a second. Frenzy is a new keyword and a new mechanic that will be featured in the set. What it means is that whenever a minion with the keyword Frenzy survives damage for the first time, so whether they hit or get hit or something, the first time they survive damage, they have to survive it, it triggers the Frenzy effect.
Yep. I've
So,
heard it described as enrage, but just once, which I think is a good
right.
description.
Enrage, but just once, and then something happens.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so should we talk about like a frenzy card?
Yeah, let's start with. I'm gonna talk about the neutral one, neutral common. It's a super boring one. You probably haven't heard about it because it's super boring. Razormane Raider, 5 mana, 5/6. Interesting addition as always to the arena meta when 5 mana, 5/6s come in. Frenzy, attack a random enemy. So whenever it takes damage and survives, whether your opponent like hits it, it'll just automatically attack something, and then like your opponent will, if it takes your opponent 2 hits to finish it off. So that's pretty interesting as far as a defensive maneuver goes. But if you're on offense, if you like hit something and you get hurt, you're gonna attack a random thing. So it is. I see people in Twitch chat asking if we're going to show the cards. We're not going to show the cards on the screen. We don't have that set up. But this is a podcast, so we always describe what the card is.
We're just talking about like 2 cards, guys. And then we're gonna do the actual kind of rankings for these cards and let you know later on.
Yeah,
But
I
right
mean, we're still
now,
going to have our pre-release
yeah,
giant card rating and review stream. That's not going to change. But yeah, we're just talking about the mechanic right now. So this is Frenzy at its most basic, right? And it is an interesting way to do it. This is not just enrage. It's not an Amani, right? You're not just getting stats from it. It's actually like it triggers on your opponent's turn, potentially. Which I know enrage does too, but here it's very specifically meant to do that, right? Like if you have your 2 hits set up, you hit it once, it may go ahead and kill another one of your minions, right? It may not get the hit that you want. So it's interesting. That's Razormane Raider.
yeah, it's good. You can think about it as a random win fury lots of times. It just seems like with the addition of the core set, uh, Hearthstone is just at a new power level right now. I think you're going to see lots of cards. The cards that they specifically called out on the BlizzCon online kind of roundtable discussion with Hearthstone, they were saying how stuff like Frostwolf Grunt and Silverback Patriarch and all those things, it's just they were of a different era. They were for introducing people to 2014 Hearthstone. And even then, they
I was
were
about to
not
say.
good.
I was about to say.
But they were used to introduce people to Hearthstone in 2014, right? So you can have those really crappy cards to introduce you to cards that are considered just crappy right now.
Oh my god.
Like,
It's just...
you needed absolute shit tier cards to introduce you to decent cards back then, which are crappy cards now. But in today's world, it's just like there's zero place for them, right? Like they don't even introduce you to anything. In fact, they'll confuse you because you're like, wait, why do I get so little?
Where's the hidden ability? Is this card a combo? Is there another card that says for each Frostwolf Grunt you've summoned this game, like draw a card or something? Like, what's happening? But yeah, I mean, this is just after the fact justifications, or I mean, this may be during the time too, but it just ends up being bad balance. Like, it was bad balance when they started it. They could have made 3/2 taunts as they do now, and 2/3 taunts with additional abilities or whatever as they do now. They just got it wrong. Like, that's all. They thought taunts were worth way more than they were. And when you don't have a lot of mechanics, they kind of are, but they still just undersold it, right? And they also didn't figure out a good way to add meaningful stuff onto 2-drops, which they have now. So it's just a mix of bad design and bad balance, and they're getting rid of it, which they should, because it was a mix of bad design and bad balance. But the whole, like, oh, we needed a Frostwolf Grunt and a Silverback Patriarch to introduce people to concepts, that's bullshit. You could have had a 2/4 taunt to introduce people to concepts. You could have had a 3/2 taunt to introduce people to concepts. You didn't because you were afraid that they would have been too powerful, and you were wrong, right? Like, this is just, it's fine, and we're 6 years down the line, but that's just terrible justification for why these cards existed. They were cards that always should never have existed, except for the fact that they did exist, right? Like, if Blizzard thinks that this is what Hearthstone should be, then at the time they made these cards, and like a lot of the neutral cards and a lot of the cards in general, a lot of the minions, just not powerful enough, or at least not late game viably powerful enough, right? They like to do things like add cards to your hand now.
Many years and many years ahead. I don't know if Ben Brode and the people at the very beginning of Hearthstone was just like, okay, we need to give ourselves as much room to grow as possible. As in, power creep is inevitable for card games. It kind of just is. So let's start at a very, very low baseline level. I don't know if they thought of that. I don't know if that entered their minds at all, but that could have also been a thing in which it's like, all right, well, we want to start it off at something very vanilla. Like, we have the golden rule that MTG helped set out of kind of, all right, this is, just sort of how much you can / should get for each mana cost. Different games, but if you played MTG, you know that it's like, it introduced you to this idea. It's like, okay, well, generally, this is how much you get per, land that you tap. So that sort of idea might have entered their mind.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. You can err on the side of conservatism. But when you're wrong, what's happened afterwards has proven that they didn't need to err on the side of conservatism, right? Like, if they had figured it out earlier, they would have just had it, or like had at least a better one. I'm not saying like if Silverback Patriarch was a 2/4 taunt, it wouldn't have been broken then, and it's still unusable now, right? Like, the point of these cards is that they're so comically bad. It's not like we're looking at a Yeti and saying, why is the Yeti so bad, right? Like, we're looking at a Yeti and we're like, we understand this will never be in a constructed deck. But this is what a card is, right? When you look at a Frostwolf Grunt, you're just like, they have misvalued taunt. Silverback Patriarch, they have
constructed decks at the very beginning, though.
Yeah, see, and so was Sengens sometimes, but they have misvalued small taunts. They just did. It was just a miss. Like, let it be a miss. There's no all this like post hoc justification for why things existed the way they did, and like whatever. Like, it's just. You're just covering up the fact that you were always wrong. Like, that's why you look so wrong now. Like, this is not the, oh, why is Yeti not more interesting conversation. This is the, why did Silverback Patriarch become a meme? It became a meme because it was that off. Not because it was a little off and we're erring on the side of being conservative. Anyway, where, yeah, like, if we're looking at something like Razormane Raider, I'm going to bring another card into it that's also Frenzy, also common, but a 2-drop version, right? They have a small one and a big one. So 2 mana, 2/3, it's a peon, literally called a peon. Frenzy, add a random spell from your class to your hand. So on curve, it's fine, and it potentially gives you card advantage. It's not like super powerful at all. In fact, by today's standards, it's probably a pretty crappy card. But that's where they're going with this, right? Like, with this frenzy mechanic, it's valued at something like, get it sometimes, right? Like, and then we'll give it to you. And they have put enough thought into this frenzy mechanic from the cards that they've released that I think it's very interesting. But the basics of the frenzy mechanic is kind of terrible. So I'm not saying Frenzy is going to be a terrible addition to Hearthstone. In fact, from the cards that I've seen, most of the Frenzy mechanics that they have created are good. Like, they don't have the problem I'm about to describe because they were thoughtfully designed around it. But generally, a mechanic, and this is the same issue with like Spellburst. You now have a mechanic that is like Spellburst, but you remove the combo aspect and you instead add the swing aspect from whether it lives or not. Most of which is not only not in your control, it's not even exactly in your opponent's control, and it just kind of happens. And because you've introduced this maybe you get it, maybe you don't to it, you end up having this ability that is hugely valuable potentially, right? Because you're taking an average. And the average may say, oh, this ability for something that's 5 health is worth a card. Like a card drawn from your deck. Well, in reality, it's going to be worth nothing most of the time, and it's going to be worth like 4 cards, you know, the one time it triggers, right? Because if you just, like, in a constructed game, and you put Razormane Raider on the board, it's never going to live a turn, you know? Like, like Peon's never going to live a turn. It's not. And it's never going to survive, like, to do whatever. So that the ability you add to it, if you take an averages approach, has to go really high, and then that causes the swing for what it does trigger. That's the baseline of Frenzy. It's very bad. It's like worse than Spellburst, significantly. And Spellburst is already a little on the high swing side. So this is like super high swing. But if you notice, for the design for Razormane Raider and Peon, they've designed around it, right? Like for Peon, they basically just made it a terrible card, so that even if you swing high, it's not that great. And for Razormane Raider, they made it so that the swing is on the board, right? It's still not designed to be a good card, but now your swing occurs on your opponent's turn. Your ability triggers on your opponent's turn, and that lets it trigger more frequently and kind of evens it out a bit. You have Druid of the Plains, this Druid epic card, 7 mana, 7/6 Beast Rush. Frenzy, transform into a 6/7 Kodo with Taunt. This one's getting a lot of talking about because it's basically 7 mana, deals 7 damage, and if you're dealing it to a target that has 5 attack or below, you also get a 6/7 Taunt at the end of it. Which, I don't know, people think it's super powerful. It's not really that powerful. Like, it's a normal premium card. I've definitely, on Friday, people were freaking out about the existence of this card. And this is not going to be a game-changing card. I mean, overall meta-changing card, let's say. It will obviously change the course of games because it's a high-swing card and a premium card, but it is no better than the other really good Druid cards. In fact, it's worse than a lot of the really good Druid cards. But the idea with using the Frenzy is you can control when the Frenzy triggers, right? Like, you're going to rush it into something, and then you're going to just get the 6/7. So it's an interesting way to use the Frenzy mechanic. They aren't just putting Frenzy the way they do Peon, right? Like, I feel like you're not going to see a lot of that, where it's just no initiative, you put it on the board, and no one can interact with it in a meaningful fashion, and then it either lives a turn and you get it, or you don't. I don't think that's going to happen that much. And if it does, it's going to happen with a very, like, crappy ability for the things that it takes to get it, so that it doesn't swing high. Like, that's what I'm seeing so far from what they've released. But the mechanic itself is not, like, I don't know. I would not have let this go through the design phase. But they've worked around it, right? Like they probably knew this was a consideration, and then so they knew they had to very specifically design all the frenzy mechanics in. Like you can't just go out and design a bunch of frenzy cards without thinking about things. Terribleness will ensue. Is kind of my point.
I like how Druid of the Plains is perfectly suited to counter Smug Senior. It comes out the exact next turn. Smug Senior is a 5/7, so it perfectly covers it. It's just kind of interesting. A card that they printed in the last expansion is one of the pillars of Arena right now, and Druid has the perfect answer to it. It gets rid of the first body on the next turn immediately. Establishes a 6/7 taunt that challenges the second body if they choose to play it very well. You just need a ping. Kind of funny how it works. I don't know if they thought about that at all.
I mean, it's an epic card. You're barely going to see it in the arena.
Yep.
I mean, I don't know. Actually, it's macro. It's going to be adjusted, right? Like you may actually see it all the time in the arena. But at its baseline, the base value, if Blizzard doesn't mess with it and up it, you will not see it in the arena that often.
Okay, so that's Frenzy. It's a mechanic that doesn't really push the boundaries of anything. It's something that a lot of people should be able to internalize decently, at least understanding it. It's not anything crazy. Past Frenzy, we also have a new mechanic which will be applied retroactively to other cards as well. Hearthstone is introducing spell schools. This is going to be a permanent addition to Hearthstone, so we won't just see it in this expansion and in the retroactive changes. From this point onwards, they want to add synergies to specific schools of spells. So instead of just giving everything spell power, for example, spells in Standard and Wild now have a tag from 7 different types. Those are Arcane, Fel, Fire, Frost, Holy, Nature, and Shadow. So you can now
in case you're
specifically
wondering,
tune these things and say, we're going to give synergies to this type, or whenever you cast a holy spell, an arcane spell, for example, you get this benefit. It just gives them more specificity.
yeah. In case you're wondering, everything's a nature spell. If you're wondering if something's a nature spell or a fire spell, it's a nature spell. It's just how they've been categorizing things. Like I think I saw the numbers of how many nature spells there are versus all the other spells, and it's like comical. But yeah, spells have tribes now. Whatever. Like, yes, it's new. Yes, it affects all the old cards. It's gonna have a possibly significant effect in Arena, especially if some of the new core cards they add use this mechanic, which is not out of the question. But probably not. Like it's still pretty combo-y. Like how often do you get, I don't know, beast synergies in neutral, right? Like maybe you get the menagerie stuff in the rotation now and then, but it's not a big arena consideration. But what will be a big arena consideration is Omega cards are returning. Except they're now super Omega cards because they're not just the normal Omega cards. If you remember, Omega cards are cards that look like kind of normal cards. And then if you have 10 mana crystals, they do something ridiculous. Like
they were always undercosted if you played it before 10 mana, and
slightly undercosted.
Well, it depends. Sorry,
overcosted.
Overcosted, under tempoed.
Yeah.
Sorry, under tempoed / overcosted if you played it less, and then it was significantly undercosted, over tempoed once you got to 10 mana. So, for example, if you guys remember Omega Agents,
how could you not?
Yeah, that was a 5 mana 4/5, and we all know that sucks. Now we have Pit Fighters with additional abilities, but if you played it when you were at 10 mana, you got 3 5 mana 4/5s, which is redonkulous.
Yeah.
So that's the perfect example of how swingy and how ridiculous Omega cards were. Now we have the same thing for spells, because now we have ranked spells. So it's class spells that gain power whenever you gain mana crystals. And then the breakpoints are 5 and 10 mana
Yep.
crystals.
So there's one extra breakpoint, which means that they're more usable than the old Omega cards. And also, Omega cards had a range too. If you remember that the 4-drop neutral Omega, I forgot what it was called, Omega Defender or something. It's just like a 2/6 taunt, which is like bad on turn 4, but not super terrible. Not like a 5/4 or 5 mana, right? Like it's sort of playable. And then on turn 10, in return, because it was sort of playable on 4, on turn 10, it just becomes a 10/6 taunt, which is a lot better than a 2/6 taunt, but it's not the same as getting 2 more Yetis. You know what I mean?
12/6.
12/6 taunt? Okay. Oh, right. It gained +2 at 10 attack, not got set to 10. But yeah, so the swings aren't all like as ridiculous as Omega Agents. That was one of the bigger ones. The Warrior one like gave you a like draw a card or discover a card or something, and then on Omega you get to keep all 3. So those are the swings. So here you have let's go with the easy one, Imp Swarm. Imp Swarm is going to be a neck. Oh my god, I'm thinking about Diablo. Imp Swarm is a Warlock common card that's going to be in the new expansion. It is a fell spell for whatever meaning that'll have, and you summon a 3/2 Imp for 2 mana. So you put a Raptor on the board, right? You have a 2-drop, but on 5 mana you'd get 2 Raptors for 2 mana, and if you have 10 mana, you get 3 Raptors for 2 mana. It's a lot better than a Raptor. Just a lot better than a Raptor, and those imps are also demons, which you could do stuff with as a warlock. So yeah, so these are just pretty damn powerful. Like you're not giving up that much on turn 2, and you're getting a lot on turn 5, and you're getting still a good amount on turn 10. Although obviously by turn 10, summoning a bunch of Raptors is not the end of the world these days for your opponent. Yeah. The other card that is more interesting, I think, to people is Chain Lightning. Also, pretty cool theme. It's a Shaman Epic spell, a nature spell, and it deals 2 damage to a minion for 2 mana, and a random adjacent one. So it's like Cleave, but you can sort of control it. And Cleave is 2 mana. So it's just it's really good. But then if you have 5 mana or more, like you get 3 damage instead of 2, and if you have 10 mana, you get 4 damage instead of 2. So you're taking a premium removal at this point, and then you're adding to it until it gets ridiculous. Whereas you look at Imp Swarm, and you're taking like a pretty crappy curve card these days, and you're adding to it.
Well, demon synergies, right? Maybe. Who knows? But that's what we got for Forged in the Barrens. And I think it'll be fairly interesting. Also, if you guys were curious, Arena was technically mentioned, but not really. So no, there is no Arena news that they divulged in the big presentations, whether it was on the first day or second day. They mentioned the word Arena in passing twice. That was it.
Hey, that's better than they did last year, okay?
Sure. So that's what we got for Hearthstone. We saw Mercenaries, we saw Barons, and that's kind of it for Constructed or
Core set.
Well, no, we know that like the core set is coming out.
Yes.
What, you want to talk about?
But
cards?
yeah, we saw some new core set cards, and we're not going to go over every single card changes, at least not until we see all of them, because they're all going to work with each other. But some things are changing, like Assassinate is going to be 4 mana now. Just like things that you kind of thought were coming, that they're probably going to come. You know, it's that kind of overall set change. And we don't know what cards are making it into the core set or not, but they did give a few examples. The Assassinate one really struck me. Someone in chat mentioned Lightning Storm. That's right. Lightning Storm is getting changed so that it always deals 3 damage instead of 2 to 3, which is fair because it was always a little understated for some reason. But more importantly, they revealed that with this core set change, they're changing the Shaman hero power, which is
Yeah.
kind of interesting. And they're removing Air Totem and replacing it with, I forget what kind of totem they call it, but it's something that buffs your minions, one minion's attack by 1 randomly, like permanently.
It's a strength. It's a
Strength?
strength totem.
Uh-huh.
So what this does is it actually makes your totems a potential thing. As in, there's no longer kind of the ability to just ignore shaman totems forever. Not that people wanted to do that too often, anyways, because of how many ways you can punish people. But yeah, there's also a strength totem now instead of the Wrath of Air totem, which makes sense because we were talking about they don't do spell power anymore. Like they don't want to just do overall spell damage or spell power, which makes a lot of sense because it's just a little bit too all encompassing. And now we have all of these schools, and you can be more specific in which spells you want to have synergy with or whatnot. So I think this makes a lot of sense. I think it's a good totem for the arena in which these small stats matter. Snowballs can happen. We're in a meta in which crazy stuff happens, but these buffs and these things do matter. Yes, it does eliminate the times in which you're like, come on, daddy needs spell power, that 1 in 4, so I can clear all of the stuff. It eliminates those opportunities, but the game is going in a vastly different direction. So it's an interesting thing. And I know a lot of people will be like, oh, what are the exact implications of this? It just depends on the core set.
Shamans are better now.
Yeah.
That's kind of the core implication for Arena. Not looking at all the other changes, and there are a bunch of shaman specific buffs. Like we mentioned Lightning Storm, but there's others that they revealed. But just from that hero power change in Arena, shamans are better. That is a good totem in Arena. A lot better than the air totem. So it's going to make an impact. The other change, and I agree with everything Merp said about just how good of a change this is overall in design. And you know that it has to be good. You don't just mess with the freaking hero power unless you're going to make like a home run kind of like design change, right? And they did. This is going to be vastly superior. Now, they also revealed 3 of the legendaries that were going into the core set that have been upgraded. They were pretty ridiculous. So Yasharaj is same mana cost, same stats, same everything, except instead of giving you a dream card at the end of the turn, it has a battle cry that just gives you all of them, 1 copy of all of them. Which means...
And all the cards are buffed now.
Wait, really? The dream cards aren't even the old dream cards? I did not know that.
No, the dream cards have all they've all been buffed except for like 1 or 2 of them. Yeah.
Okay. But like you can basically like return your opponent's card to their hand the same turn that you play Yasharaj now on turn 9, because that's a 0 mana card. And you are guaranteed to get it in your hand immediately as a battle cry. So Yasharaj got pretty insane. And that's not even that. It's gonna match the other ones, right? Malagos got totally redesigned. It's just gonna add spells into your hand until you can't add any more cards. As a 9 mana for 12 as well. So again, way better than before. Deathwing now no longer discards your entire hand. It discards a card for each thing it kills, which means you could be discarding only a couple cards or just 1 card. Like
they want to preserve the feeling of it. Anyways, so people are telling me that there were nerfs and buffs. Okay, that's fair.
Oh, for the dream cards?
Yeah. So
3 nerfs, 1 buff. Now, okay.
And for example, Laughing Sister, which was always the worst one, they buffed that one.
I see.
But huge buffs overall to all of these cards. These very iconic cards. Malagos, now instead of giving spell power, once again, they don't like spell power, especially +5. Malagos, a lot of constructed players have always said, needs to rotate out. +5 spell damage is a little bit too much. You can just do wacky things with it. And now it just fills your hand with spells. It's like a big evocation. That doesn't exactly go away. And I think that's a little bit better because you don't get all of these wacky OTKs, especially on the druid side.
Yeah. So yeah, like we got some more details on it. On the arena implications, it's not that these specific cards are problematic. It's more that this is where everything is going, right? And we knew it. We saw what happened with the priest when they updated the priest. Now they're basically updating everything. So you're gonna get a lot of, like, if they don't upgrade Yeti, and they probably won't, I imagine, Yeti's going to be the worst card in the entire game. Like, which is fine if there's a bunch of cards similar to it in power level, or like similar to it, right? Like if they don't upgrade Senjin or whatever, right? It's going to be a whole new arena when the core set launches, and I said this in the last podcast. It's actually going to cut down on RNG that happens based on drafting, because you're going to have a much more consistent level of power in your decks. You're not going to low roll, but in the game, everything's more high rolly, right? If you can do more with the same amount of mana as you could before, and everyone can do it, the game's just going to swing back and forth more. Which, from a game design perspective, Blizzard's sitting there being like, that makes for an exciting game. And from a skill perspective, you're sitting there going like, that means I lose more. But that's where Hearthstone is going.
Yep. Okay. Look, this is stuff in which I think people like I've already had people ask me, "Oh, what do you think of this? What do you think of that?" And it's just like too many changes.
Mm-hmm.
You can't evaluate any. Like people are saying, "Oh, so where does this put shamans now?" It's like, look at the core set. We know nothing about any of the cards anymore. You have nothing to hang your hat on.
Mm-hmm.
We have to look at the core set. We have to look at the expansion. We literally know none, like basically none of the important cards that are going to be in the next wave. Like we know the expansions, but the core set is what makes up like the vast majority of the stuff. You know, it's like the meat of everything. So if we don't know that, we don't know anything. Yeah, I know a lot of people are hungry for any sort of analysis, and it's just like we have no idea.
Not just wait. If anyone tells you they know something, like without the asterisk, that it assumes everything stays more or less the same, which is a terrible assumption that's going to be wrong. It's like they can know that this specific piece has made Shaman stronger, but they won't know whether Shaman's stronger overall, right? Like you got to take what anybody, literally anybody, is saying about this next arena meta that's going to come when the expansion and or core set launches with that asterisk. You can analyze any individual piece that you have information on, but we know nothing about the big picture because it's just we haven't gotten the information for it. Not just us, but nobody. So if anyone's out there like telling you analysis, they are analyzing the information that is currently available, so that when you get more information, you can add the effects of that information onto this information and get a better picture. But the information they're analyzing right now will not get to the final result or anywhere close to it, except by random chance.
Yep. Okay. We had a patch come out for Hearthstone as well.
Yeah.
Patch 19.6. This was basically just dropped during like BlizzCon, and they just want to drop everything on us at the same time. A flood of information. So with this patch, they brought some balance changes to Battlegrounds, duels, and one card in Standard, High Abes Alora. It now costs 5 instead of 4. If you remember, it's a 3/6 minion with Spell Burst. It's for Paladins and Priests. Cast a spell from your deck. It targets this if possible. Sure, that's great. It's now 5 mana instead of 4. I'm sure all of you who, for some lucky reason, just kept on getting Legendaries with Paladins and Priests might be sad to see this be nerfed. I have no idea. Anyways, that is it for balance changes with standard cards. And then there was a huge game shifting upgrade or update. Some people might say upgrade to Battleground as well. We can go through that. First, let's talk about a little bit of a tease they gave. we're going to have a specific battleground minion type upcoming. We don't know when.
But we
They
do
said we'll
know
get more.
what.
Yeah, they said we'll get more information in April, but it's going to be quill boars. Quill boars are apparently just pigs with porcupine things on them. I don't know. I'm not exactly a WoW nerd.
It's a quill boar, right? It's a porcupine and a pig, and you put them together. It's very easy to understand what a quill boar is.
I think a lot of people were surprised because they were like, "Oh, is it going to be treants next? Is it going to be totems next?" No, it's something that we haven't seen before. But Alex Dawson, Alec Dawson, who was basically previewing this, said that Quillbores will be about generating their own resource and utilizing it in the best way possible. So it's sort of this game within a game that we will be playing and managing some sort of resource with quill boars. Maybe you'll collect quills and you can do things with those quills. Who knows?
Yeah. It'll be interesting in Battlegrounds. And I think what's more interesting is that it kind of puts a direction into how Battlegrounds are going to develop. There was always this big question of what are you going to do with Battlegrounds after you have all the main tribes in, right? Are you going to just wait until Standard has more tribes before you add new tribes? Are you going to play around with the neutral minions, like this taunt stuff that we had, maybe like a Divine Shield thing that we had, play with your battle cries, your death rattles, or are you just going to add Battleground specific tribes? And the answer is they're going to add Battleground specific tribes, at least some of the time, that are not in Standard, that are not in Arena, that just kind of don't exist outside of Battlegrounds. I mean, I'm sure Quillboars will play some role in the upcoming expansion, but they are not a tribe in Standard, in like the normal game. And in Battlegrounds, they will be. And it takes what, like 15 cards to make a tribe in Battlegrounds, something like that.
Yeah, approximately.
Yeah, so it's going to be a lot of cards that they're going to design for Quillboars, which is interesting. But it also, I don't know. I was hoping for some more elegant solution, but I think this is the smarter choice for Blizzard. It allows them the creativity to keep designing new tribes. It allows them the ability to rotate tribes in and out. And yeah, I like it as a design decision. I was hoping for something more elegant, just so I don't have to keep up with all the freaking changes that go on. But that's the game. That's Hearthstone. Things are going to keep changing.
Things are going to keep changing. We already see the awkwardness of the actual Hearthstone cards in BGs.
Mm-hmm.
Piloted Shredder just sticks out like a sore thumb. Whenever it drops something, you're like, but wait, that doesn't make a lot of sense. And that's fine. I think the way they're going with the game is the right direction, which is total freedom and not being tied down to regular Hearthstone cards. A lot of people, it's nice to have that half continuity, that familiarity with Battlegrounds and Standard, of which when you go into one, you're like, oh, hey, I know that thing, and that makes me comfortable. But we don't exactly need that. Let's just get a well-polished, well-balanced, or better balanced game. And thinking back on the launch of BGs and thinking about the game right now, I'm just like, yeah, like let's not have stupid menagerie magician. Let's just have jugs instead.
Mm-hmm.
Those are much better, much more flexibility. Just gives a better game mode. Additionally, in this patch, the prizes, the Darkmoon Fair prizes have rotated out. A lot of people are happy about that. I was one of the people that really didn't mind the prizes / spells, although I always said they need to balance them. I don't mind them coming back later or being a more permanent addition. You just have to balance them. I think a lot of people were angry at the power levels of the current spells. So, do I think that they have a role potentially in BGs permanently? Yes, I think it is possible. I think this has showed that it is at least not too obtrusive to the fundamental gameplay. Were the prizes very unbalanced in many ways? Yes, they were. And I don't think people minded it for like the first couple of weeks. But then once everything was optimized and the meta got to a point where people were power leveling a ton off of these prizes, that's when people got really frustrated. So who knows if we'll see them back at a certain point. I think a lot of people want, like, just because they were so scarred from this one, are going to say never again. Meanwhile, I want to say I'd like to see them back, just not that power level again. That, because that was toxic by the end of it.
Oh, okay. Another change that happened in the Battlegrounds is Elise is gone. She's not really gone. They just reverted her buff. So now her recruitment maps cost 3 mana again, which is what Merps predicted was going to be the change. And as he predicted, and as it's going to be obvious, Elise sucks now. So don't pick Elise.
Elise was never completely unpickable. That's the thing. She was just not good enough. And look, I called this change because I know what Blizzard does by now. They're just gonna say, you know what, Elise, you had your time out in the sun, you had your time leading the pack. Now it's time for you to get back in line. This is just what Blizzard does. And if they're gonna make her worse or like put her back in the line, why not just do a reverse? Like, why not just revert her instead of doing an actual like other tweak? I think it's fine. We might see a change in her later on, but I thought that was just the easiest solution for Blizzard. So they're gonna take something that requires less work, which I don't blame them on. Other hero updates: Hook Tusk has been removed. I don't think anyone is gonna miss that. At least for now. Hook Tusk had her time to shine. She was top of the meta for a while, and then she got absolutely demolished, and now she's just out, period. So maybe we'll see you later, Hook Tusk. Blizzard always does this, where they take heroes out, and they might introduce them with completely different hero powers.
Yes,
You guys
please
remember?
do.
Yeah.
I did a like one by one. I went through every single hero power in the entire freaking Battlegrounds game. Hook Tusk had like 2 more clicks than anybody else per turn. Like it was just a terribly designed hero power in terms of just usability. It did not fit with the rest of the game. They need to redesign that. Not from a balance perspective, just from a it does not fit Battlegrounds perspective. And it never did. And they made it worse when they tried to balance her.
Yes. Okay, so King Mukla, Bananarama. The big banana drop rate has increased to 1/3. Yay. Akazamzarak, big change. Ice Block can now only be discovered once per game. Great change, by the way. Absolutely amazing change. Because a lot of people were pissed off at Akazamzarak for being able to delay the game for such a long time. Now, one of the problems with Akazamzarak, I think that people got really, really angry due to the prizes and Akazamzarak. So this was one of those things where I don't know if Akazamzarak would have gotten the same kind of nerf. If it would have gotten the same nerf if it weren't for prizes, because people were really, really freaking pissed off at Akazamzarak for being able to ice block on the next turn, not get ice block, but get, because you basically couldn't get it the next turn after it pops, get it from the prize, and then get it from your own hero power. So it's just like ice block, ice block, ice block. People were really, really freaking pissed off about that. Just incredibly angry. So we have that change, and we also have a change of Yasharaj, Embrace Your Rage. They changed his hero power. So at the old hero power was, at the start of combat, add a minion from your tavern tier to your warband, keep it. So you click the button for 2 mana. A minion pops up from your tavern tier when the battle begins, and then it just stays there, right? It just stays there. Now, at the start of combat, summon a minion from your tavern tier, add a copy to your hand. So instead of staying there, it's now just added to your hand. The stats say that this didn't really change anything. Basically, the stats say that Yasharaj is still pretty bad. When I first read it, though, for a split second, I thought it stayed on your board and you got a copy in your hand. So I
Yeah,
was
that's
like,
what I
wait,
thought too.
what? But then once I saw this, I was like, oh, so you just have the extra flexibility. Okay. Is it better? Yeah, of course it's better. You have flexibility, right? And you don't have to either keep it there or sell it, which is always nice. But yeah, it's not the absolutely crazy change I thought we were getting. And I like just the fact that I even thought that was what we were getting for a second just shows how good Battlegrounds is, like just how crazy Battlegrounds
Well,
is right
also
now.
just how bad Yasharaj's hero power was.
Yeah, it was just really bad.
Like
So now,
I remember when it first came out. I'm like, really? That's what it does? Why do they think this is at all viable in any way, shape, or form?
yeah, this is better for quite a few reasons. There are minions in which you want, but you have board space issues.
Mm-hmm.
For Yasharajas who are unlucky enough to get to tier 6, it's harder nowadays, and I'll explain. But in the old meta, whenever you got to tier 6 and then an Amalgadon popped up, you're like, yeah, oh, actually, that's nothing. Like, that sucks. I can't do anything with it. So Amalgadon is probably like the biggest change. Instead of you just summoning it and it's sitting stupidly on your board as a 6/6, now you can actually use the Amalgadon to adapt multiple times, which is great. Those are the hero changes. And let's go through all the changes, and then we can talk about the meta for a second.
Okay, Minion Changes. First, Illustra's gone. I don't want to talk about it. It's gone.
We talked about Illustra so many times.
And you know what? I've never played in a meta with Illustra really in it. So Illustra doesn't really exist and has never existed as far as I'm concerned.
I have talked about it extensively. You guys should know my thoughts. If you don't, you can listen to past Lightforges. But I've always said I don't like what Illustra does for the meta. So
yeah, I mean it's clearly bad. I mean we have some people defending its existence, and I'm like I don't know, but whatever. Let's move on to the other people in the minion pool because a lot of changes are happening. I'm just gonna tick down them. Do you want to like pause for each one or?
No, I don't.
Okay, so I'm just gonna tick down them. Rabid Soralisk. It has lost 1 attack instead of 4/2 is now a 3/2, but each time you play that minion with a death rattle, it gains +1/+2 instead of just +1/+1. Wax Rider Togwaggle gained a health instead of a 1/2, it's now a 1/3. Yoho Ogre gained a health, it's now a 2/6. Molten Rock gained a health, it's now a 2/4, and is quite good now, by the way. Arm of the Empire, now instead of giving +3 attack whenever a friendly taunt minion is attacked, it only gives +2, but that +2 is permanent.
Ooh.
So this is a useful card now, actually, not just a tempo card.
Best 3 drop in the game now.
That's what?
So good. It's the best 3 in the game now. It's so good.
Oh, I believe it.
Yeah.
Champion of Yasharaj it used to be a 2/2. That says whenever a friendly taunt minion is attack, gain +1/+1 permanently. It is now starting at a 4/4.
Huge difference.
Mm-hmm.
Such a big difference. Yeah, like they really want to make taunt comps work, and this sure helps it out. Anyways, let's go on with the changes.
Junkbot is now tier 4. We've talked about this before. Kangor's Apprentice is now 4/8 instead of a 3/6.
Great. Okay. If you guys remember what I talked about last week when we found out about like the Junkbot change due to Ixar's interview, I was like, it only takes one sort of like it's a catalytic effect. Once you start this process of one additional person in lobby is playing a bit more mid-range or aggro, it brings another person down, and then it gets to the point where suddenly, like very fast, you just have this cascading effect where it pulls everyone down. And we have gone from a rush to tier 6 meta into a very turtley tier 4 meta.
Mm-hmm.
Lots of and it's not just Junkbot, right? Arm of the Empire plus Champion of
Yep.
Yasharaj plus taking out the spells, which
Yep.
gave you the ability to level and tempo at the same time. And then with that effect, let's not overlook like Sorlisk as well. Like a little bit more stats in the early game. Togwackle, a little bit more stats in the early game. Ogre, Molten Rock, same thing. And with the Ogre and Molten Rock, they work with Arm of the Empire, etc., etc. They work better with Champion Yasharaj. And of course, it's like the better Ogre and Molten Rock are early on, the more likely you pick it up. And the more likely you're going to pick up subsequent taunt things as well. It's just this cascading effect, like I'm talking about. So lots of people are finding success in turtling up tier 4. You're playing mechs, great. The tier 4 junk bot strat, tier 4 taunt strat, sometimes mech taunt strats. People are telling me that they were taunting their deflecto bots because that's kind of the meta nowadays. Now, we've gone back to a meta in which the person who wins lots of times is still the person who gets the high rolls, 5 or 6. But it's not like everyone is getting to 6 and then the weakest person on 6 dies. It's really just the person who wins was able to do that, but you have a lot of people staying on tier 4, just turtling up. It's definitely the meta for you. Spells are out. Blizzard helped this mid-range, kind of this mid-game, just stats, decent scaling comps. It's not like a huge brand of Malgadon scaling and all of that stuff. But it's like, okay, I'm going to get some stats with my Champion of Yasharaj, get it with Arm of the Empire, incremental stats here and there. And it's very possible for people to just play for, like a top 2, a top 3, and say, okay, one person's going to get all the Amalgadons and they'll win, but I can beat people with my
You have a good shot at 2, and then you don't want to be in the bottom. Like, this is what we were talking about before, right? Like, think about, like, in the last couple of times when we talked about Battlegrounds, I think you were convinced that we could not go back to this kind of meta without some kind of major rule change, right? Like, and no, we're back. We're not 100% back, but we're most of the way back to the way things were 8 months ago. And there were no major rule changes. All it took was a reversion of one of the things that was prolonging the game, which was the spells, and then adding a couple, not even that much. Like, if you look at what changes were actually made to the minion pool, it was not that much. There was one significant neutral one that's appearing all over the place. I have two significant neutral ones. But the rest of them just moved up a little here, a little there, right? Like, just a little bit. And they were all changes that you were like, oh yeah, like if you look at it, you're like, these are reasonable. These were a little bit weaker before. Now it's not like they're overpowered. They're just like, part of the conversation of what you'd actually pick up. And we haven't gotten rid of any of the resource heroes, outside of Elise. And we're back. The game changes so much based on what is in the game, and there's no fundamental reason why it can't revert back into a more tempo focus.
Well, I did say they would have to basically revert the econ heroes,
yes.
like most specifically Elise, and they did that.
Well, no, you were saying the econ heroes, not just Elise, because we were talking about, we were already assuming Elise was going to be like either gone or nerfed to hell or something. That was already the base assumption of our conversation, and you were still very not convinced that you were saying that they would have to revert the econ heroes, if not all of them, at least a large chunk of them. And you don't need to do that. Like, even if Elise comes back, as long as Elise is not OP, there's still room for more econ heroes without it being a pure econ focused meta, depending on what the minion pool is, right? And depending on whether you can do tempo. Like, right now, all that's changed is that you can do tempo now. And once you can do tempo, the meta regulates itself. Like, what was really, really throwing off the Battlegrounds meta, I think, was partly because of the spells, but also partly just because most of the unbalanced heroes were the econ heroes. Like, and they were actually just, I mean, they still are, just better than the tempo heroes. Like it's a balance issue. It's not a fundamental like Hearthstone Battlegrounds issue.
As long as they keep the heroes in check in terms of the hero powers, it could be okay. Like that could be fine. They just need to keep the hero powers in check. And nerfing Unleash is definitely the best part of it. And with Unleash, it just got to this point where the problem with Unleash was the curve was just perfect. It was the perfect curve to do what they want to do. And Unleash also just wouldn't have been as powerful without the prizes. As like Unleash used the prizes in the way that was the best. Like she took advantage of the prizes better than anyone as well. So it was just this perfect storm with Unleash, where she was like got the perfect curve, and also the prizes were introduced at a time in which she could take advantage of them the absolute best. But I would still like to see them work on some heroes like, for example, Omu. Omu is one of those heroes that is still lurking there. It's obviously a very good hero. We can see that from the stats. Um, I would just like to see econ heroes not be that good. Like Omu is still like one of the issues right now.
I don't
Like
think
I think
Omu's going anywhere. I
I
think that's the
don't
new
know if Omu's
standard.
going anywhere,
Like,
but I don't like Omu's presence in the game.
I just mean from a design, like from a balance perspective. You look at Omu and what Omu actually does in terms of like what resources it gives you, and this is the new amount. Like this is the new power level of Battlegrounds. This is where they wanted to bring everybody up to, and at least overshot it. That was Elise's problem, right? Like Cthulhu is probably going to get a treatment at some point. I played Cthulhu for the first time on Friday, and chat was walking me through how to play Cthulhu, and I'm just like, really? What? Turn one, you just hit the hero power button? You don't do anything? What? No. No, this is the Eudora problem.
But it's not as strong as Wagtoggle was.
Right,
Because
but it's still you're over the mark. You're over the mark because Omu is what's going to set the standard now. I think anything that goes over Omu is going to be nerfed down. Like I think right now they're looking at it. I'm just looking at the win rates from before because HS Replay doesn't have the new win rates yet. So I'm looking at last 7-day win rates. But if you're looking at this and you're like, well, Lisa's gone basically, Azaram Marak, whatever is nerfed, Cthulhu's next, and Maiev they would nerf if they could figure out how to freaking nerf Maiev in a good way. I think they haven't quite figured that out yet. They may still be playing around with it, but they're all targets. I think Omu is the cutoff where it is no longer a target on Blizzard's list, but rather this is the kind of stuff. Because what does Omu do? Omu fundamentally gives you 10 coins over the course of the game. And it gives you them literally over the course of the game in a delayed fashion. It is the closest approximation to what a hero power would do. And if you compare that to what Bartendotron did, you can see what the old scale was supposed to be and what the new scale is now. And they very shamelessly released Omu with Bartendotron still there. And Omu was all of a sudden top tier, but not the best. And Bartendotron's always been, like, he's been unplayable for a very long time now. And then they're buffing everything, right? They're buffing everything that used to be like a little bit above Bartendotron or whatever to this new level. So this is the level now. And it's 10, it's not 5.
Well, Omu was released, and it was not immediately the best because I think it was introduced with like Jandis. Yeah. So that was why.
It was always, yeah, but it's still, it was always part of that tier that's right below broken.
Like, no, well, the thing is, it's like it was still pretty broken at that time. You just had one of the most like broken things, like Jandis Pogos at that time. So, yes, it wasn't immediately number one, I believe, but it was because you had Jandis Pogos. And this is before people could like figure out, like people figured out later on in Jandis Pogos kind of time how to, I guess, fight against it, or to better sort of play around it. But when Jandis Pogos like first popped out, people were just like, it was a terror. It was an absolute plague. It was so horrible. But
Yeah, but
yeah,
that's what I mean by that was over the line, right? Jandis was over the line. Omu's where the line is. This is why you're gonna see, like, in a normal meta, you're gonna see stuff like Rafam and Omu be at around the same level. And I am assuming that they're not gonna nerf that level down, and they're instead gonna try to bring everyone up to that level because it's a very elegant line. They could have nerfed all of it down. It would have involved things like getting rid of Rafam. Like that would have been like you would need to get rid of Rafam if you want to go down to the Bartendotron level. You'd actually need to get rid of probably a few of these hero power concepts. So they're obviously not going to do that. They've established this new line, and Omu's not above that line. Like if anything, Omu is the line. And like Rafam, well, you don't have to talk about Omu. You can just talk about Rafam, right? Because Rafam's been around forever. Rafam is the line, and Omu kind of hits that line. It is not significantly over the Rafam line. It, in fact, if anything, it converts the Rafam line into a delayed tempo flexibility kind of combination. Like that's why I don't see it getting nerfed. I can see it getting removed, like rotating out of the meta if they're like, look, we just don't want people to have to keep playing Omu and facing Omu and people don't like it. It's also not a particularly key Hearthstone character. But that's the power level. Everything's coming up here. Like George is also similarly here. They're not going to change George's hero power ever from here on out.
I don't see that happening either. So this is Battlegrounds right now. We haven't heard much about esports in Battlegrounds. Maybe we'll hear about it soon. What we do know is that Battlegrounds is right now being balanced pretty regularly. It's something that arena players have dreamed about for a long time. This attention, this balancing. I haven't played the newest patch just yet. I'll be playing it tomorrow. It's definitely interesting. A lot of people are happy about the slower pace of Battlegrounds right now. So this is good. Like this is good. I think this is something that people needed after the tier 6 meta. We also had some duels changes. I don't know how much we want to talk about that. Mostly because
None.
if we mention duels changes, I have no commentary. I'll just be like, oh, that's interesting. Wow, that's great. So look, if you want some hot duels takes, you can go over to PJ's channel and ask him about that. He continues to play it. Bless his soul. So, okay, that's it. That's cool.
All right.
Hearthstone got a lot of news.
Yeah, a lot of stuff. Enough to keep us busy, to keep you busy, to keep you looking forward to stuff. This is probably not going to be as transformational of a year as last year, but they're doing what they can to keep up the tempo. It's really quite a lot. In fact, like Hearthstone gets to the point these days where it's just like it's overwhelming me with content. There's so many things to do. I am not going to be able to do all of it unless Hearthstone is my only game. You know, and it's that was something that I think was never a goal of Hearthstone, to be someone's only game. It was supposed to be a complement, right? Literally, it spun off of like a WoW concept to be like, hey, you enjoy WoW, you should also enjoy Hearthstone. But starting from 2020, the whole, or actually probably 2019 with Battlegrounds, but really 2020, their whole philosophy has shifted. Right? This is the new philosophy where Hearthstone will give you as much content as you can freaking stomach. And 2021 is keeping the foot on the same level of that pedal. So I'm excited for the Mercenaries whenever the hell that comes out, and the new Battlegrounds. I'm playing Battlegrounds again. I'll be back in the arena once they put the core set in. Because that'll be a real exciting change for the arena and obviously constructed, but I don't play constructed. And it's just gonna be a year of the, what is this a year of? Gryphon, I think.
Wow. I think something interesting that the dev team stated was they see Hearthstone not as a game, but as a game hub.
Mm-hmm.
So Hearthstone is the place that they want you to go in order to choose all of these different games. So there's not like Hearthstone period. It's just like you opening the Blizzard launcher and you have Overwatch, you have Diablo, you have StarCraft, you have all of these games, and then you can just pick whichever one you're feeling. And they want that same thing within Hearthstone itself. So once you pick Hearthstone, it's like another hub. Now you can pick what you want to play, what you're in the mood for, just all of these things. And it's part of the reason why Blizzard tries to, this is how they're Blizzard, right? Like they want to
Yeah.
capture all of these things. They want to make you feel complete from just Blizzard games. I mean, this is why we have BlizzCon, and people are very attached to the Blizzard name. They want to capture everything. So they're like, okay, we have this card game. Well, we want to capture everything that you want from card games. There's auto battlers. Okay, well, people are obviously interested. We want to give you an auto battler. People like Slay the Spire, these sort of like single player roguelikes. Yeah, let's give you that. We have these constructed things. We have limited stuff. Like, we just want to be a hub. And it's something that I don't think a lot of people are surprised about, but it is nice that they have just come out and said, like, this is our goal. So we see that they're coming out with all of these new game modes. And if people are like, well, why aren't you just focusing on one thing? We know that's not their vision. And as long as they can deliver on these items, I think that's fine. It's just, I know a lot of arena people are looking forward to any sort of change with arena, and I don't know. They didn't mention it, but my guess is a big change is going to come maybe like mid next year to the arena once they're able to get to it, and we'll see arena change in a way such that it will be a limited format, yes, but it'll be nothing like the arena we have known for the past like 6 years. And it's just a necessary change at that time. Them saying nothing about the arena right now, I think just means they have a lot more important fish to fry, which they do. We see them working a ton on the core set, BGs, and everything. We see them doing a ton of work, and they're delivering on a lot of stuff. I've never seen Blizzard deliver on Hearthstone as much as they have in like the past year and a half. Once Battlegrounds come out, once Duels has come out, like this core set that we know they've needed for a long time, it's like the dev team is kind of making up for all these things that they should have done and probably want to do for a while, and now we get to see the fruits of all the labor. So I'm very happy with what we're seeing so far. It is just very frustrating with the arena, but we have to just give them time, I guess, until they revamp the arena in a way that is needed, but I think will make some people unhappy because it's going to change it fundamentally.
I don't think that's going to happen with the arena. Well, at least not anywhere close to mid next year. I do agree that a big change is going to happen to the arena in the mid next year, but not anywhere as big as I think what you're thinking of. I think it'll be more incremental of a change than transformational. And I think Arena will look more or less like it looks, and they'll just make another limited game mode in 2022 or something. But we will actually, we'll probably have more information in like 2 months because they're going to put a roadmap out. Remember the roadmap last year for Year of the Dragon or Year of the Phoenix? They're probably going to do it again this year. We don't have the roadmap yet, but we probably will in a month or so. And at that point, we'll see what they actually have in store. Like, Blizzard plans these things out so far in advance. I can't think that something in a half year from now will be that big. That, like, they haven't... The arena's not that big of a priority that they would have gotten to it in this time frame. Oh, there is a roadmap. Well, if there is a roadmap, and arena transformation is not on that roadmap, then I really don't think we're going to get it in 2021, 2022 maybe. But I'm hoping something happens in 2021 with the arena. But yeah, again, that's what I always say. Even if they don't touch arena at all, that is not a bad thing, as long as they are repeatedly balancing it in a reasonably quick fashion. Because arena self-regulates. All they need to do is keep updating constructed and then putting those cards in arena, and they're going one step further. In addition to hitting the button to like actually balance everything, they are preemptively excluding cards like whatever the hell that 9-mana dragon is from ever entering the arena. Like that is more thought given to the arena than I would have expected Blizzard to do by like several magnitudes. So yeah, like the core set is changing, and when the core set is entirely changing, that means arena is entirely changing. Whenever the core set hits arena, screw the next expansion, screw whatever rotation happens to be in the arena at the time, arena changes hugely. Everything you knew about the arena before, besides like the basic fundamentals, is going out the window, right? Everything you know about the flow of arena, what cards to look out for, all going out the window. I have a feeling that things like tempo in the early to mid game is not really going to matter anymore, and it will be quite heavily focused on swings, potentially on combos, potentially not, but quite heavily on things like independently powerful swing stuff like Shavera's. Like that's a good example to me of like a card that'll just like do a lot by itself in a reasonably swingy kind of board state. Like that's where I see arena going, and it may not be that blatant because they're not going to put a bunch of cards like Shavera in, but that'll be the effect. Because when all of your most powerful cards that you want to put in your deck anyway gets effectively lowered by 1 mana, and then all the bad cards that would have been, unplayable or like use 2 more mana than the good cards would for the same effect, when they're no longer in the game, you are effectively, like, think about how many cards you're going to play on a turn on average. Maybe 2. Well, you're going to be playing them at 2 extra mana. That's how swingy the game is going to be compared to where you are now. So like on turn 5, instead of playing 5 mana, you're playing 6 mana. And then your opponent's going to play 7 mana. And then you're going to play 8 mana. Like, in terms of the effects, that's going to happen. But in terms of your curve and what you can actually put on the board, you're not actually getting that much better curve than you used to get. So your ability to deal with the curve and your opponent's ability to deal with the curve is going to go up a lot, because again, it's not about which cards in the core sets are going to be here or not or whatever. It's going to be the fact that the core set's going to exist and everything's going to change. Like, they're going to get rid of the bad ones, so you only have the good ones. Then they're going to buff some of the good ones, so you get even more tempo, card advantage, whatever the hell you're getting. So everything's more, and that's going to be the big picture kind of effect. And it's going to be so big of a difference that when you step into the arena after the core set, it will not feel like the same game. It will not feel like, oh, just another meta. It'll feel like a different game mode, even though nothing has changed except the card pool. But like more than half the card pool has changed. Okay, enough about Hearthstone. Let's talk about the game that's on the rise. I feel like Hearthstone is like on the middle, right? It's like pedaling along, doing its thing. It's not dying anymore the way people thought it was going to die like 2 years ago. It's not rising anymore the way in 2020 and with Battlegrounds and the end of 2019 it was rising. Hearthstone's going to be Hearthstone for 2021. But the big announcement, question from the GOAT, what about frickin' Diablo as a franchise? And before you get to it, I'll let you take the first take, Merps. But I want to give a shout out to all our top patrons for the month of February: Nordoge, Joel T, RV Night Train, Changyin 1, Yin, Eric L, Aaron LS, Dan F, Doug A, Karova, Torjado, Math and Carnage, 4P and Brand New. Thank you guys for sticking with us all this time and showing your support. Question from the GOAT. What about Diablo excites you the most in 2021?
All right, look. The Diablo panel was huge. They gave a lot of time to Diablo. We know that Diablo Immortal is coming out soon. Soon TM. They already had an alpha. It's going to come out. Both of us are going to try it out at least.
I am surprised there's no release date for Diablo Immortal. That was actually a bit disappointing for me.
Yeah, right? I thought they'd be like, oh, coming out, in June, right? Like releasing in June or something. Diablo 4, we know that there is a rogue, and they had a pretty cool cinematic with like Blizzard always does nice cinematics.
The cinematic was freaking amazing. I am
They
so
always
excited for Rogue. I was my least favorite class in Diablo 1. I'm probably not going to like it that much in Diablo 4, but the movie got me pumped.
Yeah, Blizzard has always been S tier with cinematics. Like
Mm.
all the Overwatch cinematics for the characters. Oh, the
Oh,
amount
so
of
good.
feeling that they inject into a 5 minute cinematic is incredible just for all of the characters. And it really makes Overwatch, which the more you think about it, the less sense it makes. It really makes no sense. It's just like this hodgepodge. It's
Don't
like it
Overwatch is like don't think too hard on it. It's
right. It
great.
makes
Just don't think
a
too hard on it.
seems super duper logical. It's like, oh
Hmm.
yeah, of course Thor would, meet up with this billionaire kind of playboy who would team up with like this cryogenically frozen superhuman. Yeah, that makes sense. And if you think about Overwatch, you're like, wait, okay, this makes no sense. Like this sort of team and how all of these characters got together. But they do a super good job on the cinematics. So look, Rogue is coming out. They gave us a little bit more information about Diablo 4, but we know it's not going to come out until like 20 apocalyptic times.
Also, before that, I want to say one thing about the Diablo 4 reveal. I'm excited. That video was freaking amazing. But when they started showing gameplay footage, it was even worse than I was looking at Diablo 3 gameplay footage before Diablo 3 came out. When it was just like, how can you still launch a game at whatever time you're going to decide to launch it with that as your main gameplay? Like Blizzard does it and they're successful with it, but I mean, I had the same feeling about StarCraft 2, where I was looking at it, I was just like, these are graphics from 10 years ago, man. Like how are you going to release a modern game with it? And as I was playing StarCraft 2, as I was playing Diablo 3, and I'm thinking as I'm going to be playing Diablo 4, I'm going to be like just very disappointed with the graphics. And that's
I don't know. I think you were alone in that. I thought people were very happy with StarCraft 2 graphics.
really, people were
Yeah.
happy with StarCraft 2 graphics.
Yeah. I
Oh,
remember when it came out, people were because like here's the thing, it has to stay true to its heart, which is competitive real-time strategy. Like a lot of people were very, very impressed with StarCraft 2 and how it modernized everything. But at the same time, like you got to stay true to a lot of the issues that you might kind of encounter when you do have these real-time strategy things. So yeah, like a lot of people don't care about
okay.
graphics.
But that's
People that
different,
did
right?
care,
Not caring about graphics and wanting the graphics to be more functional than good looking
right?
is
No,
different
but
than the graphics actually
did
being
care,
good looking.
the people that did care were very impressed knowing that it's like you still have
Hmm.
these issues, right?
Okay.
So
So maybe I
yeah, I
was
think
alone on
everyone
this.
recognized that it's like you're no, of course you're not going to get crisis graphics, right? Like, but I think you were very alone here. If I can remember back, and most people were very impressed by it. Yeah.
Okay, okay. So maybe I was alone, but I was not impressed by StarCraft 2 graphics. Diablo 3 graphics were a joke. I ended up liking
Diablo
them
3,
better than I thought I
most
would, but it was still bad.
people agreed that they didn't like it, but it had to do more so with the color scheme.
Yeah, okay. Set the color
And
scheme aside. Like, I'm gonna put
not
aside the whole, like, oh, is it dark enough kind of like thing aside, right? Like, I'm a huge D2 fan. I like it dark, but that's not my problem with Diablo 3 graphics. Diablo 3 graphics was bad. Not the art direction was bad, but the technology and what the resources they spent on it was bad. Like it looked like a game that should have been released 8 years ago. Not like beyond the fact that it looks like maybe not faithful to the Diablo franchise. Like even if the Diablo franchise was about poppy colors and like whatever the hell was going on in Diablo 3 second act, it still would have looked bad.
I don't know. Okay, there I think you were also fairly alone.
Really? Oh, do people have
Yeah.
such low expectations for graphics these days? Like
For
compare it to like
for
Overwatch,
like
for
an
example.
isometric dungeon crawler,
Well,
I
I
I
don't
don't I
know.
don't know what.
So is Hades like the epitome of graphical genius then? Because Hades looks really freaking good.
Well, that's the epitome of art direction, not graphics. Art
But
direction.
not just the art direction. The graphics also look good. Not just that the art works really
Yeah, but
well
it's
with what
based
it's
on the
doing.
art direction. Like because they chose that style,
Uh-huh.
it was done very well. So we can like a lot of people praise the art direction, and the graphics fit it very like
Yeah.
it's like the difference between someone who designs the sculpture and someone who like chisels it out, right?
Right.
If there's a difference, like if it's
Okay.
made
So
by
I am talking about the design, but I don't know. It's not. It's not just the design. I guess maybe like they were just like, in my opinion, Diablo 3's art design just decided it was going to look like it should have come out 8 years ago. Like that was the design. I felt like that was the limitation of some sort, right? Whether it was a budget limitation or the fact that they had to make the engine 10 years before the game was released, or like make the graphics 10 years before it was released, or whatever. I feel like that wasn't the art director sitting there being like, I want it to look exactly like that.
No, the complaint about Diablo 3 was just it was just like it was really the direction. Like, no, the graphics weren't like amazing at that time, but no, people weren't just like, wow, these are a complete shit. People were just angry at the direction they took for basically everything,
Well, okay,
like
but that's what I'm trying to separate out, like the whole direction from the graphics, right? Because the direction has to do with like choices that you make.
yeah,
Whereas
the
I
troll
think,
thing.
yeah, and we could talk about how bad the choices for Diablo 3 were, and how good the choices for maybe Diablo 4 is, and how great the choices for Hades is. But after you make the artistic direction and the choices, you still have to put the models together, and the technical aspect of it beyond the direction is where I think Diablo 3 also falls quite significantly short, because I'm not a big art guy, in case you guys were
Yes.
confused about this.
Yeah.
I've never been a big art guy. I think some things look good. I think some things look bad. I do not hold my appreciation of art standard to anyone else's. Definitely do not have a particularly, I don't know, good appreciation of things that are art related. I'm a numbers guy. I'm a logic guy more than a numbers guy, really. But I can recognize when something just looks bad and out of date. Not in a style way, but in a, like, if I load up Doom, the style is really good. I mean like the old Doom from like the back in the, when was it released? 92, 89, like PC days. And I could say these graphics are bad. The art direction was perfect, maybe, right? But the graphics are bad. That's what I'm talking about with Diablo 3. And that's what I'm talking about with Diablo 4. Diablo 4's art direction looks way better than Diablo 3's art direction.
Yes.
Like, everyone agrees with that. They took notes, they actually listened to people, whereas Diablo 3, they like kept telling people they were listening to them and then really did not. But I don't know if it's the technology or just actually part of the design choices to make it look like that, but it looks bad. It's like, if I go back, it look like, I don't know, I'm thinking of like bad polygon, like Final Fantasy VII looks terrible. It did not hold up well at all. Like, that's what I mean by it looks terrible. Not like the design decision that they made artistically was bad. I thought that was all good. But like, the execution was bad by today's standards. And so Diablo 3's execution, I think, was pretty bad by the standards of which the year was released, which was like
in 2012,
yeah,
the execution
2012.
was good. It wasn't excellent, but it was like fine.
Okay. Well, what do you think about Diablo 4? Do you think the execution of Diablo 4 looks fine for a game that'll be released 2 years from now?
Every single time Blizzard has done this, and I've looked at pre-release previews from Diablo 2 and also Diablo 3 compared to the shipped game, it always looks very different.
Okay.
So the videos they show us right now, like, and I understand it's different people because it's been like a bajillion years. But Blizzard just kind of does this as well with their games. For other games as well, they'll show you a preview, and once the end result comes out,
they add more filters and polish to it, and then it ends up looking better.
Most of the time, unless you're doing Warcraft 3 Reforged, it looks so much freaking worse. But than the previews, actually. So yes, most of the time it does end up looking better, more polished, and just more complete,
Okay.
because you also get like context to it, right?
Right.
Yeah. Like, it's not just this awkward looking thing where it starts off like in the middle and then they show nothing and then it's just this guy like, whoa, and you're just like, okay, well, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, it ultimately ends up looking quite different. Blizzard as a company is usually because some companies what they show versus what you get at the end. Some companies it's actually pretty similar.
Yeah,
With Blizzard, it's
because
very
they're not
different.
messing
So
with it. But okay, I didn't know that. That wasn't
yeah,
something that I. So I'm hoping they change stuff. And the thing that I'm talking about the most are like character models and enemy models, and like ability models, I guess, and animations. But like not just the animations, actually the art model for it. The animations are also bad, but it's a Diablo game. Like I kind of just expect bad animations.
it's
Um,
Diablo.
but
Look, Diablo 2 is going to be resurrected, which means Diablo 2. This isn't a remake. This is Blizzard saying Diablo 2 is going to have a fancy skin on top of the original 25 tick game. So the frame rates are not 25 anymore. The tick rate is still 25. And we have Diablo 2 Remaster. They showed what it's going to look like. We're going to have all of these quality of life
mhm.
changes. I am super hyped. The game, okay, so we'll just call it the fancy skin on
Yeah,
top
the
of the.
fancy skin on top of Diablo 2 looks freaking amazing.
It looks so good.
Like
It
it
looks
looks like
so.
Diablo 4 almost. That's what I'm upset about. Is
It looks
that
so good.
like I'm okay with that visual when it's a Diablo 2 remaster. But if you're gonna sell me that as Diablo 4, I just think you could do better. I don't know. But yes, Diablo 2 looks freaking like it looks at least twice to three times as good as I thought it was gonna look in my head. Because we
Oh
all knew
yeah.
Diablo 2 remaster was gonna come out, like,
Oh
for
yeah.
a few weeks.
Especially because if you have seen the way that they have remastered, let's say StarCraft,
Yes.
like StarCraft, the original StarCraft, I was like, okay, this looks nice.
Mhm.
Like this looks what it looks like. They filled out some colors,
Yeah, you can get
everything.
the 1080 resolution.
Right. But once again, of course, StarCraft at its core, it's competitive. So like you can't like take away that the pillars that right. And with D2, we were talking about this before. It's like, wait, faster cast rate, faster hit
Hmm.
recovery, all of these things
They can change.
work on the 25 tick engine because it was 25 frame rates. And now it's still the same thing. It's just you have this smooth, 60 frame rate game, it just ticks at 25, but they smooth everything out. So you will still have all of these breakpoints. But and you know what? That was the smartest decision they could have made because people want to play
Yeah.
the game. Like they want to play the original game. And
Hmm.
we can talk about how Grief was the most broken melee weapon in the game, and it invalidated all of these uniques, which is true. We can talk about how Enigma, after giving teleport to every single character, uh, quote, ruined the game in many ways. And sure, you can complain about all of that, but at the end of the day, this was the best decision that Blizzard could have made, which is to not touch the core game and just give us all of these quality of life improvements. It's everything that the Diablo 2 community, of which I look at the subreddit, I've played it continuously for many years after ADWCTA just abandoned the game because he's a
Oh
quitter.
yeah, I just quit the game in 2011 like an asshole instead
I
of
know.
waiting it out to the I don't know what is it 2021 all the way through until it gets its upgrade.
So during this time, like if you threw me into the resurrected game right now, I would be I would feel right at home because
Hmm.
it is the same exact game. And they're gonna have ladders, they're gonna have more frequent resets. The what they wanted to do is just make the best version of Diablo 2, and I am so hyped. I'm so excited. I'm just going to tell you guys right now, once Diablo 2 Resurrected comes out, this is all I'm going to be playing for months. Like months and months and months.
Okay, well, we can when Diablo 2 comes out, we can put the Hearthstone stuff on pause for like a couple of weeks, but I'm gonna get
You
off of
heard what I
Diablo 2 after a couple of weeks
said.
of
You're a quitter.
intensive playing.
Yeah, because
Okay. My opinions on it has a giant asterisk to what Merps is saying because I care much more than Shiny. Despite what you have heard in the last 15 minutes, I do care much more about the balance and the actual nuts and bolts in a game than the graphics. And the graphics they blew me away. They're freaking amazing. And I agree with Merps that it is the best business decision Blizzard can make. Like, do a quick upgrade, get all the visuals right, and just don't touch the core and give people that nostalgic experience. And then here's the thing: if you don't touch the core, you have to do less work. You can release the game faster. You can do, like, it's the business-wise, from a perspective of making money, from a perspective of giving people what they probably want, this was great. From the perspective of what I was hoping for, because I actually wanted to play a Diablo game for a long time, this is not going to get it done. Because this is still Diablo, like, this is still, let's set Diablo aside. This is still a game that was last balanced in 10, I think was the last time it was balanced. In an actual balance patch. And this game is all over the freaking map in endgame balance. It is all over the freaking map in mid-game balance. It is just kind of a poorly balanced game by today's standards. Not kind of. It is a very poorly balanced game by today's standards. And 99% of its available endgame options are not playable. Like, at tier 1 or tier 2. And then, you know, another, like, probably 60% of those options are not playable even at tier 3 or tier 4. And of the ones that are playable, they use, like, half of the same item pool that everyone else uses, at least. It's just, if Diablo 2 were actually released today as, like, even an indie game, people would be like, what the hell? This is awful. There would be, like, rioting going on, or people just not play the game, really. So what this game is it's just pure nostalgia. Like, that's what's driving it, and that's what Blizzard's counting on, and that's what people want. So I think it's a good business decision. But I think there were so many low-hanging balance fruits to fix that would expand the game so much and actually let you use all those skills that they built in, use all the weapon types that they built in. And some of them, like, have to do with, like, such super basic things, like switching it up from 24 ticks to 60 ticks. Or rather, no ticks, because ticks were a really dumb way to do things. Ticks are a really dumb way to do things now. I'm not going to judge when Diablo 2 original without the even expansion pack was released, whether that was reasonable or not at that time. So, I'm going to play it. I have such good memories of Diablo 2. Me and Merps played Diablo 2 untwinked for, like, so many freaking years on and off, over the course of, like, middle school, high school, college, grad school, like, just lots of stuff. So I'm definitely going to play it. I got a couple builds I'm working on, that I'm starting to put together for some interesting untwink runs, doing some more research, remembering how attack rating and defense works in Diablo 2.
Defense was
a terrible system.
Attack,
oh my god.
Yeah, attack rating and defense in Diablo 2 sucked, which is why the best builds ignored both of those things.
Oh my god. Like, just when they thought that was a good system. Okay. Anyway, looking back on it makes me very glad that these days, if I pick up any game, I don't have to deal with that kind of balance in the logic. I gotta remember my breakpoints too, which I haven't even gotten to that part yet. I'm just trying to figure out the base mechanics right now again. That's not going to be what Diablo 2 is, right? Diablo 2 will not patch to give you a better version of the game, a more balanced version of the game, a more playable version of the game from a, end game perspective. What it will do is give you much prettier graphics, allow it to run smoothly on your computer, update all the Battle.net stuff so that it's running on the same, like, modern, like, server as all the other Blizzard franchises, and give you some quality of life upgrades. It's not entirely unchanged. There's auto gold pickup, there's shared stash. I think that's it. I think that's the full extent of the quality of life changes that they told us, at least. But
no, they also stated that there would be, for example, an increased character.
That's right. That's right. They're gonna fix the lying character screen that gave you wrong numbers because they, like, I don't know how they couldn't do. Like, by the way, Diablo 2 math is not actually that hard. But for some reason, the character screen just repeatedly makes mistakes and gives you wrong information. So they're not going to do any of the advanced calculations that you would see in like Diablo 3, for example, even much less the even more modern games. But they will update it and give you one correct information and two a little more information. So there's some upgrades coming. If you had a good time with Diablo 2, it's worth a. It's definitely like even if you're playing by yourself, like it's worth a buy and worth a run through. It's just that good of a game. And if you never played Diablo 2 before, I I would still recommend you try it, even though it's a bad game by today's standards. Like just so you know the history, and because I think there's still enough there to keep you engaged, and the story is actually quite good. It's not told in long form, but they are doing. This is what I'm hugely excited about. By the way, I was so excited about this, and then you messaged me about it at the same exact time without me prompting it, and then at the same exact time, brand news behind me saying, "Why are they making such a big deal about this? Who the hell cares about this stuff?" And that's that they're going to redo shot for shot all the Diablo 2 and cinematics shot for shot without changing anything. Same camera angles, same everything for Diablo 2. And Diablo 2, just like StarCraft back in the day, had the best cinematics for its time. By far, no games competed with it as far as I'm concerned. And this is hugely exciting to me to just be able to see it. There's like about a half hour's worth of cinematics all throughout the game. And because the story is actually, it's quite good. I like it better than the Diablo 3 story. And it'll be good to know before going to Diablo 4 or even Diablo Immortal, because Diablo Immortal takes place between 2 and 3.
It's true. Immortal is going to come out sooner, though. Immortal should be out in the next few months or so. Meanwhile, Diablo 2 Resurrected, they say on or before December 2021.
Mm-hmm.
So my guess, what they're saying is it's coming out this year. And you know what? If they are announcing it, that's just the right move. It's like, hey, you see this game, you want this game, well, it's coming out this year. It's exactly what people want. And if you look at their timeline as well, if they released it like next year, it's a little bit too close to potentially, Diablo 4
No, it
and
won't
all
be.
the
Diablo 4 is
stuff
not
that
coming out for 3 years. Don't tell me any different.
yeah, like the thing is, even if they released it, like they can't release Diablo 2 kind of a year before Diablo 4, I feel like, or that's
They
just like an
can.
opportunity. I don't know about
You
that.
think of Diablo 2 as a bigger thing, I think, than like
I
99% of.
think you I think you underestimate how big Diablo 2 is and how big the Diablo 2 community still is and how much people will want to play
Not
it.
to say they
And
won't want to play it, but I don't think you need to space out a year between it and Diablo 4. Like, they're spacing out like 6 months between it and Diablo Immortal. Diablo
because
4.
that's just like different, right? It's like phone games. It's really just okay. Do I have a few minutes while I'm doing this thing? All right, I'm gonna do a run or two on Diablo Immortal. I do see like that being not a different market, but different usage, right?
Mm. Yeah, like overall, because Diablo 2 is really unchanged, and looking at their philosophy, it seems like it's a very big key of this. Like, they're like, don't expect any patches to come out besides to fix bugs. Like, and it's unclear to me whether they're even going to fix existing bugs. I don't think they are. I think they're going to
So
look at any bugs that's considered part of Diablo 2 code as like just part of the game. So there are certain skills that are like literally unusable because they've been bugged for the entire existence.
So they said this was on day 2, and
Uh-huh.
obviously this is stuff that I followed. Um, as for bugs, they have a rule with there's no like sort of set rule, but they're going to be addressed one by one. And the question they're going to ask is this just hindering people's enjoyment, or was this actually a quirk that people enjoyed about the game? So skill miscalculations that you were talking about,
That's gonna
100%
get
being
fixed?
yeah, that's gonna get fixed
Oh
because
my
they're like it's
god,
not
I
fun.
can
It's not
actually use like Fend?
fun. No, but sure. Yeah, you can use Fend. Like
What I
no,
mean
but
is, it will no longer be bugged. It will just be bad because it's bad on its own
yeah,
merits
it's
rather
gonna
than
be real
bugged.
bad. Okay, so other bugs, like for example, fire enchant stacking, right? That's just a bug. That's going to be fixed. Mana burn right now is hugely bugged, as in it is just redonkulous. That's going to get fixed. There's other things, like for example, if you it's just really specific things. Like if you're fighting Neelathak and you know the poison vipers around Neelathak, they do way more
Yep.
damage than they're supposed to, because instead of doing damage per hit, they do like damage per tick.
Yep.
So you just die. You just like
Yep.
pop
And the worst part
immediately.
is that in one of the latest patches that they actually did balance for Diablo 2, they fixed Nihilak's other stuff. And they just did not fix the freaking Vipers.
Yeah, so the Vipers are terrible. I'm guessing that's going to get fixed. That wasn't a specific one that they talked about, but we can talk about things that they're not going to fix. So, number one, the Andariel quest bug, which is Andy right now, you can bug her to always give you first time kill drops. So, what this means is in Hell Andy, and you don't need to do much to bug her. All you have to do is go to Act 2, and then she's bugged. And she just drops like she is dropping for
Yep.
the
First
first
time.
time, always. And they said that, you know what? This is something that people just have more fun with, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's freaking Andario.
Yep.
She can't even drop the best items.
Yep.
So it's just like, you want to farm Andario? Go ahead. This is just more fun, right? And I think this is a perfect example where they're like, was this a bug? Yes. Did people enjoy it? Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And it didn't break the game in any way. If it's something that if it's a bug that people were happy to find and then quote exploit in a very small way, they're fine with it.
Yeah.
Also, bugging armors, they said they're going to keep. I know
Ooh.
you don't know what this is. It's fine. It's basically just getting more armor on your ethereal armors by taking a gamble, which is something that it seems like it just sounds like something that modern RPGs would have, right? It's like, oh, do you want to gamble on this item to potentially get like more? Yeah, so whatever. It's yeah. That's kind of it. And like the people working on Diablo 2, that's the thing that I've liked. At every step of the way, they've been like, okay, they always ask these questions. Does it stay faithful to the feel of Diablo 2, right? And number two, does this make it more fun or less fun? Because at the end of the day, it's just like that's what's important. Now, when you go to ADWCTA and be like, well, these things are unbalanced, they're like, no. The rule number one is it still has to feel like Diablo 2. And then
Yes,
if we
and
can change
Diablo
stuff
2
like
feels
that,
unbalanced. So
yes. So you can't balance it because it is unbalanced. So it has to feel like Diablo 1 or Diablo 2 first, and then you can change stuff, but it still fundamentally has to feel Diablo 2. So they addressed it as in like these bugs, which are happy little finds for people, they're gonna keep. The stuff that is just annoying, like a skill sucked and it is unusable because of a bug, they're going to fix. They're going to make sure that gets fixed.
well, that's good to hear because quite a number of skills are bugged, and I don't think they're going to be good if you unbug them, but they'll at least be, I don't know, potentially a little more playable. And then there are just skills that are like, I don't know, if you want to see a skill that is, this is like halfway up the Amazon's skill chart. There's a skill called Impale. It looks really cool. It is not. I don't think it's meant to be a skill that nobody can ever use, and I do mean nobody can ever use. You will just die immediately when you try to use the skill. It cannot hit anything because everything moves faster than its animation allows you to actually like hit with it. It is interruptible. You can't fix that because that's just how the skill was created. There's nothing wrong with the skill. I think there is actually a bug with the skill, but even if there was no bug with the skill, there's nothing you can do with it. It is just probably, in my opinion, the most poorly designed skill in all of Diablo 2 because it serves no purpose, but yet looks really cool, and it would not be that hard to fix. And they just did not touch it for the entirety duration of the game, really. They did so much tweaking with the skill tree, by the way, over the course of Diablo. Like, it looks nothing like the stuff that's powerful versus not powerful. It just doesn't look like what it looked like on release, which is a good thing because on release it was an even bigger mess where I think each class had like one definitive thing that was at least 50% more powerful than the next best option. So they just never left it. Nobody ever touched it. It just stays it is. It's going to be like that forever, apparently, and it is Impale. You can go and I'm sure there's some YouTube videos on it if you want to look for a very obvious, a comically bad move that is super basic too. It's just Impale. There's nothing special. You just grab your spear and you poke something, but you poke them really, really slow.
You do. Yeah. Diablo 2 coming out this year. I'm going to guess that it's going to come out, holiday. Like they say 2021. I'm sure they want to give at least a little bit of time for people to buy it before the holiday season, or so that people can ask for it before the holiday season. If you're a kid. So yeah, I can see this being released in like, I don't know, mid-November, early December. They definitely want to get in before the holiday rush. The earlier you get it out, the more people can ask for it, and then like less chance of people being out of money by the time it releases, so that they can't buy it.
Yeah, I want to say one more thing about the balance, just in case people are like, "Oh, ADWCTA, why do you care so much about the balance of the game?" It's obviously not going to be anywhere near perfect. Okay, this is how off the balancing of Diablo 2 is. I'm going to put it to you in numbers. We were talking about Frostwolf Grunt, and it was a 2/2 taunt, and we're like, this is terrible. Like, think of a Silverback Patriarch, a 1/4 taunt, where like a 2/4 wouldn't even break in and be bad. Pretty soon after the game was released, 3/4 taunts were just kind of available. Today, you have to be a 3/4 taunt and have an ability, right? So 1/4 taunt was just comically bad. In Diablo 2, more than half of the skills are the equivalent or much worse than a 1/4 taunt on turn 3.
Oh yeah.
For the entire game. Like, if you look at Hades, for example, as a modern game that is decent with balancing, you could like be like, oh, this move is better, that move is better. Hades never goes up and down by more than 25% of overall value, like, or very rarely does it go up and down by more than 25% of value. I did a whole bunch of videos on it, and I found some outliers, but overall, it stays in that range. The range that I would really like Hearthstone to stay in, which would be the equivalent of something like 100 to like 160 maybe. And that's where all Hades just stays in. Diablo would have skills that are in the 300s and the 200s, the same way Hearthstone would, and also the same way Hearthstone would. It would have things that are like a literal 0. And being Diablo, you can always 100% pick which thing you use. So you're always playing constructed. And then a huge portion of your skill pool is just rated like below a 50. While a small number of options are a 300-ish.
Yeah, look, here's the thing. If you play Diablo 3 right now, there's lots of channels which create content and tell you, okay, these are the top builds for this season.
Mm-hmm.
It's a gradual sort of like, okay, these two classes are at the very top, then here's this group of 5, here's this group of 5, here's this group of 5, and they group it by greater rift completions. Like, okay, this tier can complete like this greater rift, and then you have this group which can like clear a little bit lower greater rift, and then like lower. It's a a gradual slope downwards. But it's sort of like, okay, even if you want to play this like weird eccentric build, you have a lot of options, and they're worse, but it's like you said, we're going from like a sword eater tier to quote unquote just like a primordial drake tier.
Yeah, exactly. That's what modern balancing of ARPGs are like.
Right. So it's like, okay, you don't get this 300 sword eater, but here's a primordial drake, and it's gonna tear shit up, right? It's really freaking good. It's just not sword eater level, which is good. But yes, Diablo 2, it's like, oh, you want this sword eater, or do you want this Frostwolf Grunt? Like, it's truly.
Or do you want an Alarmo bot? Because we got a lot of Alarmo bots here for you too.
Yeah, a lot of alarm bots. You want to be a Raven Druid? Great. You're gonna get walled at the very start of Nightmare.
And
Like you won't even make it.
like even aside from builds, like the way they do mechanics, like a whole bunch of stuff just doesn't work against bosses. It'll work against everything else, and it just won't work against bosses. They're balancing also on how they scale down each as the difficulty gets like high, like is also it doesn't follow any kind of like math, so they've like just tested it and they got to a certain level, and I heavily question that level, but that's at least within reason. There are also just a certain amount of things that will work fine with other stuff, but just like cannot do anything to a boss because all bosses, all of them, literally 100% of them are and all super uniques are immune to your effect.
So at the end of the day, this is also why it's all about clear speed and melee heroes in Diablo 2. This is the unbalanced thing that you were talking about. They made melee heroes useless except for Smite Paladins.
Yep.
And it's basically just because like Smite is just this perfect skill which by itself ignores defense.
Smite ignores defense, so you don't have to deal with the whole attack rating versus defense mechanic that's terrible and uses a lot of resources. Smite also has knockback, which ignore how it faces on an actual boss, but knockback is not reduced throughout your difficulty levels, while something like stun is reduced by 1/4 on all enemies, and then an additional at least 50% on pretty much every enemy that has, like, because each enemy has another reduction on it, in addition to the overall difficulty level reduction. Well, and then other things just literally don't work. Like, they stop working in super uniques in hell.
The thing that really makes it unbalanced is well, Smite works with too many things that probably shouldn't work with Smite in terms of balancing. It works with Crushing Blow. It works with the grief damage, and it works with Life Tap. So Ubers become too easy with Paladins, but then of course Smite doesn't work when you're actually talking about clear speed. And if you're talking about clear speed, well, now you're talking about Hammerdins, Lightning, Javazons. You're talking about, you know, the good old Blizz Magic Find Sork. So it's just like melee heroes have zero place in the majority of the games, except for like these super bosses
with one very specific build.
And then they become trivial. They become actually trivial when you're just smiting things down and you're just like bam, 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 hitting them with your shield.
Because knockback is not reduced at all in Hell, while stun is reduced by what is effectively at least minimum to like 12% its effectiveness.
It's bare really minimum. You keep talking about the knockback. It's just they made all the items work with it. Like the OP items, it's just too freaking good. Like you get Life Tap, you get Crushing Blow with the Smite, and you get the grief damage with it as well. But it's really just the Crushing Blow. Like Smite hits so fast, and you get all that Crushing Blow, which Crushing Blow takes away a percentage of the enemy's health instead of a fixed amount. In which case, it's like the melee
but other
version.
Things can get Crushing Blow too. Like Kick Assassins can get Crushing Blow. Like Crushing Blow is not like unique to a Smite Paladin.
Yeah, but if you're hitting the fastest that you can hit possible, that is better. Like the faster your attack speed, the better Crushing Blow is.
Right. So you can hit that. Well, you can hit like a 2-frame attack speed on on a Smite. Like that's the difference because nothing else hits at a 2-frame attack speed.
It's ridiculous. And then Life Tap works on it as well. So you are leeching.
But again, the 2-frame attack speed on the Crushing Blow is what's doing the extra damage. It means because nothing else can get to 2 frames, the best they can get to is 3 frames. This is not a sliding scale, which means the best that it can get to is like 2/3 the impact of what a 2-frame would do. There's no in between. So you're already down 33% effectiveness by using anything else, unless you can also get to 2 frames of Crushing Blow.
I believe other melee builds can get there, but they don't have 100% accuracy. That's the problem.
Okay, right.
So it's like you do hit the fastest, because you're hitting the like at the fastest, tied with some other melee builds, and you're hitting 100%, which no other build can match. Yeah. It's insane. But look, we're talking about it. It is supremely unbalanced, but there's a reason we've been talking about this game for a long time on this podcast. We played it for a long time. As you can tell, I know a lot about the game because I've kept on playing it. On Pluggy, I have found so many items. Like I just, yeah. You can put me in D2 Resurrected right now, and I can just I will know every aspect of the game, and I will feel very comfortable there. So I can't wait for it to come.
Oh, because it's the same game as the one you've been playing.
They said they were releasing patch 14D, which is the current patch.
The current patch.
So they are just releasing the current patch. I was curious. I was like, are they releasing like 1.10? No, they're just saying, look, it would be like if you jump back into Diablo 2 today.
Mm-hmm.
But we're just having a fancy shell on top of it, and the fancy shell costs $40, by the way, which I'm fine with. I know a lot of people are angry, and they're like, "Oh, $40."
Like, wait, what was StarCraft remastered?
I forget how much that cost.
Okay, I don't know. I don't think $40 was that bad of a price point. It was higher than I expected too, but like by $10, like.
Yeah, I think I would have expected maybe 30.
Yeah, like half the price of a AAA title, which would be 60.
Yeah.
But
I'm fine with it.
Yeah,
and this is like, if I'm paying $10 for a movie, let's say, am I going to get more than 10 hours of enjoyment out of this? Oh, hell yeah. Hell yeah. So.
All right. I think that wraps up the podcast. We'll talk more next week. Probably not about Diablo 2, but maybe also about Diablo 2. As we transform the Lightforge into a Diablo 2 modes podcast rather than a Hearthstone modes podcast. Okay. Until next week, then. This is ADWCTA.
This is Merp. See you guys.